that would be nonsense. Fortunately, the Greek language comes to our aid here. There are three words in Greek for love. One is the word eros. Eros is a sort of aesthetic love. Plato talked about it a great deal in his dialogues, a yearning of the soul for the realm of the divine. It has come to us to be a sort of romantic love. And so we all know about this. We've experienced it and read about it in all of the beauties of literature. In a sense, Edgar Allan Poe was talking about eros when he talked about his beautiful Annabel Lee with the love surrounded by the halo of eternity. In a sense, Shakespeare was talking about eros when he said, love is not love which alters when it alteration finds or bends with the remover to remove. It is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is a star to every wandering bark. You know, I can remember that because I used to quote it to my wife when we were courting. That's eros. The Greek language talks about phileo, which is another level of love. It's a sort of intimate affection between personal friends. It's a reciprocal love. On this level, you love people that you like. You love because you are loved. This is friendship. Then the Greek language comes out with another word. It is the word agape. Agape is more than romantic or aesthetic love. Agape is more than friendship. Agape is understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill for all men. It is an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. Theologians would say that it is the love of God operating in the human heart. And when one rises to love on this level, he loves every man. And even though he has on the basis of that love to stand up against the evils which have been structured in society, even though he will have to demonstrate, he will have to boycott, he will have to sit in, he will have to march, he will have to picket, he looks in the face of his most violent opponent. And he says he is that way because he was taught that. For generations his parents taught him, even his church taught him that, his schools taught him that, his culture taught him that. And somehow you look into his face and you seek to tear down the unjust system while maintaining an active attitude of goodwill toward the perpetrator of that unjust system. You rise to the level of loving the person who does the evil deed while hating the deed that the person does. And I believe it is this kind of love which will lead us out of this dark night of racial injustice to a brighter day of brotherhood. Somehow in our most difficult moments, at times we've been able to rise up to the essence of nonviolence. We've been able to look into the eyes of our most violent opponents and say in substance, we will match your capacity to inflict suffering by our capacity to endure suffering. We will meet your physical force with soul force. Do to us what you will, and we will still love you. We cannot in all good conscience obey your unjust laws because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good. So throw us in jail, and we will still love you. Send your hooded perpetrators of violence into our communities at the midnight hour and drag us out on some wayside road and beat us and leave us half dead. And as difficult as it is, we will still love you. Threaten our children and bomb our homes, and we will still love you. Be ye assured that we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. And one day we will win our freedom. But we will not only win freedom for ourselves, we will so appeal to your heart and your conscience that we will win you in the process. And our victory will be a double victory. This is the meaning of nonviolence. And when we grasp it, we will not seek to rise from a position of disadvantage to one of advantage, thereby subverting justice. We will not substitute one tyranny for another, but we will know that a doctrine of black supremacy is as dangerous and evil as a doctrine of white supremacy, and that ultimately God is not interested merely in the freedom of black men and brown men and yellow men, but God is interested in the freedom of the whole human race and the creation of a society where all men will live together as brothers and every man will respect the dignity and worth of human personality. And with this philosophy, I believe that we can go this additional distance, working hard, mobilizing our forces. And may I say to you that there is still a need for more people to become actively involved in the movement. I would urge all men of goodwill to become involved participants rather than detached spectators. This summer, we will be working all across the South. In my organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, we have what is known as the SCOPE Project, the Summer Community Organization and Political Education Project. After the Civil Rights Bill, the voting bill, is passed, it will be necessary to get Negroes registered to vote by the thousands. And I believe in 10 weeks through our SCOPE project, we can double the number of Negro registered voters in the Black Belt South. And we are asking at least 2,000 students from Northern and Western and other universities over our nation to join us and come into these communities. We will be working in 120 counties, and we will be working in these Black Belt counties to get Negroes registered and to get the kind of political education going that will bring the awareness and the determination to register. It seems to me that this is a noble task that any student participate in. We must have a sort of domestic freedom corps. By the thousands, students and faculty members will continue to come into the Deep South and aid us in the struggle. In short, that is still a great deal of work to be done. And as I said, no community can boast of clean hands in this area, and this problem will not be solved until we develop a sort of divine discontent all over America. There are certain technical words within every academic discipline which soon become stereotypes and cliches. Every academic discipline has its technical nomenclature. Modern psychology has a word that is probably used more than any other word in psychology. It is the word maladjusted. And certainly we all want to live the well-adjusted life in order to avoid neurotic and schizophrenic personalities. But I must honestly say to you this afternoon, my friends, there are some things within our world and our nation of which I'm proud to be maladjusted, of which I call upon all people of goodwill to be maladjusted until the good society is realized. I must honestly say that I never intend to become adjusted to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to adjust myself to religious bigotry. I never intend to become adjusted to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few. But I recognize that there are between 40 and 50 million of our brothers and sisters in this country who are perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. And I will never adjust myself to these conditions. I will never be satisfied until all of God's children will have the basic necessities of life. I must honestly say that I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism and the self-defeating effects of physical violence. But in a day when Sputniks and explorers are dashing through outer space and guided ballistic missiles are carving highways of death through the stratosphere, no nation can win a war. It is no longer a choice between violence and non-violence. It is either non-violence or non-existence. And the alternative to disarmament, the alternative to a greater suspension of nuclear tests, the alternative to strengthening the United Nations and thereby disarming the whole world may well be a civilization plunged into the abyss of annihilation. And so maybe we need a new organization in our world, the International Association for the Advancement of Creative Maladjustment, men and women who will be as maladjusted. Men and women who will be as maladjusted as the prophet Amos, who in the midst of the injustices of his day could cry out in words that echo across the centuries, "Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." As maladjusted as Abraham Lincoln, who had the vision to see that this nation could not survive half slave and half free, as maladjusted as Thomas Jefferson, who in the midst of an age amazingly adjusted to slavery, could etch across the pages of history words lifted to cosmic proportions. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As maladjusted as Jesus of Nazareth, who could say to the men and women of his day, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, pray for them that despitefully use you. And through such maladjustment, we will be able to emerge from the bleak and desolate midnight of man's inhumanity to man into the bright and glittering daybreak of freedom and justice. And may I say to you in conclusion that I believe we will go that additional distance. I still have faith in America, and I still believe that even though we have some more difficult days in Alabama and Mississippi and all over, that somehow this problem can and will be solved. That we are mobilizing forces, and we have a coalition of conscience and a grand alliance now that will bring an end to the injustices that have been with us for so long. I still have the faith to believe that we shall overcome before the victory is won. Some more will get scarred up a bit. Before the victory is won, some more will be thrown into jail. Before the victory is won, many will be misunderstood and called bad names simply because they're determined to stand up. Before the victory is won, maybe somebody else, like a Mrs. Lutzow, a Reverend James Reeb, or Jimmy Lee Jackson, may have to face physical death. But if physical death is the price that some must pay to free their children and their white brothers from an eternal death of the spirit, then nothing can be more redemptive. Yes, we shall overcome. And I have faith in the future, because I know somehow that although the arc of the moral universe is long, it bends toward justice. And that is something in this universe which justifies Carlyle in saying, no lie will live forever. That is something in this universe that justifies William Cullen Bryant in saying, truth-crushed earth will rise again. Yes, we shall overcome, because James Russell Lowell is right. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to speed up the day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands all over this nation and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Thank you.
I know it will gladden the Reverend King. The dedication of the UCLA community to the civil rights movement is not only theoretical. Today, yesterday, at this very moment, the professors from our history department that were in Selma last month are at every one of these exits collecting money for Reverend King. Our dedication is not just theoretical. Thank you.
sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when it happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now. Because I've been to the mountaintop.
He moved crowds like no one before him. A preacher turned prophet, a voice that made America tremble and hope at once. To the world, he was the dreamer, the moral compass, the saint of nonviolence. But away from the microphones, he was something else. Human. Brilliant, burdened, magnetic, and flawed. He preached fidelity, yet longed for warmth. He spoke of love while breaking hearts. Around him were women who saw both the man and the myth, and agents who listened, waiting to turn that humanity into evidence. The FBI called it surveillance. The faithful called it sin. History calls it complicated. Who was Martin Luther King Jr.? A man consumed by temptation, or a nation's mirror, reflecting its need to crucify its imperfect prophets? He was 26 when America first heard his name. Montgomery, Alabama, December 1955. A city of bus routes divided by law and habit. When Rosa Parks refused to stand, the young pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church was asked to speak for the protest. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't plan to become a symbol. He only meant to steady a community in crisis. But when he took the pulpit, calm and unhurried, the crowd felt something electric. By the end of that night, he was no longer just a minister. He was the movement's voice. Fame came like weather, fast, unrelenting, unpredictable. Reporters knocked at the door. The phone rang past midnight. Threats filled the mailbox. Coretta tried to guard the house, but in 1956, a bomb tore through their porch. The baby was inside. When King arrived home and saw the shattered glass, he prayed instead of shouting. That restraint turned him into legend. But legends do not rest. He began traveling constantly, mass meetings in Montgomery, conferences in Nashville, fundraisers in Atlanta. He stayed wherever churches could house him, spare bedrooms, borrowed parsonages, modest hotels in segregated districts. Supporters saw only composure. Inside, exhaustion hollowed him. His letters from those years talk about the fatigue that eats the spirit faster than the body. Coretta had married a preacher, not a national idol. She practiced her music in quiet rooms while her husband drifted farther into public life. Their rare dinners together ended in phone calls or strategy sessions. She never doubted his devotion to the cause, but she already sensed the personal cost. By 1958, Hoover's FBI had begun filing routine reports on King, then classed as a rising Negro leader. The surveillance was political, aimed at tracing any communist links through his advisor Stanley Levison. Yet the tone of the memos hinted at curiosity beyond ideology. Subject exhibits strong personal magnetism among female parishioners, one field note from Montgomery observed, bureaucratic phrasing that would later expand into obsession. That autumn, King traveled to New York to promote his first book, Stride Toward Freedom. At Blumstein's department store in Harlem, a deranged woman stabbed him with a letter opener. The blade lodged near his heart. Doctors said a sneeze could kill him. The recovery changed him. Visitors described him as serene but remote, as if already halfway to heaven. He told Coretta that surviving the attack meant his life no longer belonged entirely to me. In 1959, he toured India to study Gandhi's methods. Crowds there greeted him as a kind of returning prophet. Journalists followed every step. The reverence felt alien. It also fed the distance between husband and wife. Coretta noted in her diary that he prayed longer, slept less, and carried solitude inside him. When they returned to Atlanta, The family moved into a larger home, but privacy vanished. Meetings filled every hour, letters arrived by the thousands. He confessed to Ralph Abernathy that leadership felt like a hotel with no checkout. The two men shared long car rides between speaking engagements. Abernathy later recalled how King spoke of loneliness, not self-pity, but a kind of ache. He said the crowds give you power, but they drain your peace. There is no evidence that he strayed during these first years, yet the emotional pattern that would define the next decade was set. Public exaltation, private isolation, unrelieved pressure. Wherever he traveled, admirers surrounded him. In 1960, the FBI file expanded again. Hoover's analysts marked King as a potential moral weak point, a phrase that meant opportunity. For now, they simply listened. Phone taps authorized through Levison's line, reports cross-checked by Atlanta agents. They heard sermons, logistics, prayer. Nothing scandalous, but enough to taste the intimacy of another man's life. By the end of that year, King was 31, father of 2, pastor of a national cause. To the public, he was unshakable. To himself, he was divided between the Saint America wanted and the man he still was. That was the threshold. The moral gravity that would pull him upward and the human hunger that would pull him down were already in motion, waiting for history to collide them. By 1961, the Montgomery boycott was history, but Martin Luther King Jr. was living inside the echo. He had become a moral brand, a man summoned from state to state to baptize every new protest with legitimacy. Crowds waited at airports, news crews trailed his car, churchwomen reached for his hand as if touching it could absolve them of fear. He responded with grace, but even his closest friends noticed the strain. He slept less than 4 hours a night, missed meals, and carried the hollow-eyed fatigue of a soldier who never leaves the front. Coretta kept the house in Atlanta. Their letters that year read like correspondence between diplomats, not lovers, itineraries, flight times, requests for clean shirts. She was raising 2 small children alone, reading headlines about her husband's arrests and threats, while parishioners whispered about his destiny. She believed in his mission, but sensed that history was quietly replacing marriage as his first covenant. The FBI's watch deepened when the Kennedys entered the White House. Robert Kennedy, pressured by Hoover, authorized limited wiretaps in October 1961 on King's associates, officially to monitor communist influence, unofficially to watch King himself. The first listening posts were in New York and Atlanta. Agents reported long nights of phone calls, laughter, and what they called unstructured social interaction. There was nothing incriminating, but the moral tone of the reports was changing. That year, King's organization expanded fast. Workshops, strategy sessions, travel from town to town. It all depended on a small circle of staff who followed him everywhere. Among them was Dorothy Cotton, 30, educated, charismatic, newly appointed director of the Citizenship Education Program based at Dorchester Center near Savannah. She trained activists to read, vote, and stand firm under arrest. King admired her intellect. She admired his endurance. Their paths crossed constantly, in Birmingham one week, Atlanta the next, then Savannah for training sessions that ran past midnight. Cotton later said, "We were living out of suitcases, moving from crisis to crisis." Within that rhythm, friendship blurred into something closer. They shared late-night talks in borrowed church offices after rallies, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and crumpled flyers. Witnesses later recalled how his voice softened around her, how laughter replaced the cadence of sermons. One aide said, "When he talked to Dorothy, he sounded like himself again." By 1962, FBI analysts